So in Australia, we have a hardware store called Bunnings. It is one of Australia's most trusted brand and it is a dominant player in its space. However, it is so dominant as to, for example, be rightfully accused of being a monopoly. Here is the thing. People who actually run monopolies do not so much like it once the public starts catching on to the fact that they are indeed a monopoly. So, whilst being a hardware store, Bunnings claims that it only controls 16% of the market. And the way that it gets there is by claiming that by selling other accessory things that are not their main bread and butter, they are competing with storefronts that happen to sell those things. Let me give you the example right in front of you. So here is the catalog for Bunnings. This is the latest catalog. This is up to date. And you're going to see what they mostly focus on. And you're going to see here that this is hardware, this is construction, this is renovation tools, these are drills and saws and angle grinders and sanders. These are the types of things that they sell. Now, note that this catalog is about 20 pages or so, and I want you to pay attention to the types of products that are browsing on the screen right now. Everything from screws to nails to drills to drill bits, saws, workwear, things that if a construction project was going on, you will quite often see on site. Now you see here, do you see how they start selling storage? Because they start selling storage boxes, Bunnings wants to claim that they are in competition with stores like Target and IKEA and Kmart. Okay, because they sell these electronic doorbells and sometimes Wi-Fi routers and range extenders, they want to say that they are in competition with stores like The Good Guys and JB Hi-Fi and other electronic stores. Because they sell cleaning accessories like this, they want to say that, well, they're in competition with general supermarket stores, like Woolworths and Coles, so on and so forth. But again, right back they go to plumbing and all of these very much hardware based things, right? Look, they put a few lamps to again say that, oh well, we're in competition with lighting stores and everything like that, right? So that is what they do. Then they go back to paints and things that are very much things that a hardware store would sell pretty much exclusively. Now, for comparison, this is JB Hi-Fi in Australia, again, one of our most trusted brands, and this is an electronic store. This is a store that because Bunnings say that they were selling smart doorbells, they are in competition with. But note that this storefront over here does not sell any hardware of the types that you will find in the hardware stores. They're not going to sell you 2x4s, they're not going to sell you drill bits, they're not going to sell you all of these things. Now, Bunnings also doesn't necessarily sell TVs and everything like that, but you can see what they're trying to do. So here over here is where, because over here you're going to see these smart doorbells, they're trying to say that this is a competitor. So in summary, what they're trying to say is this: are we just a hardware store? And what is the meaning of a hardware store? That is basically it. Because if you define Bunnings as a dominant player in the hardware store, the way you and I would understand it, then their market share is estimated to be up to 70%. But if you define it the way that Bunnings would like you to define it, where simply by the fact that they sell physical goods of some shape and size, they are then able to say, well, anyone that sells physical goods of some shape and size is a competitor to us technically. Then they say, well, we're only about 16% of the market. And surely 16% cannot be a monopoly. Like, think about it. If you can go to Bunnings and you can buy yourself a smart doorbell. Or you could go to JB Hi-Fi and buy yourself a smart doorbell. Or you could go to Amazon and you could buy yourself a smart doorbell. Doesn't that put them all in competition with one another? But then you ask yourself, well, what if I just wanted to buy drills and lawnmowers and paint? Then where would I go? And suddenly the competitors that Budding has to deal with become far fewer in number and far less potent in our marketplace down here. But then Bunnings has one more thing for you: a 10% price beat guarantee, pretty much store wide. What does that mean? That means that if you find a product at Bunnings and it is not already at the lowest price, they are going to match the competitor's price for that same product, that same SKU, by the way, and they're going to beat that by 10%. It is one of the longest running ad campaign things in Australia. It's been here since pretty much I came over here in 2004. It's been one of the keys to their success. Nefariously, though, what Bunnings doesn't tell you is that they often have exclusive licenses to sell the products in their storefronts, and many of the most popular brands are actually a home brand to them. Again, meaning that you cannot get these products anywhere else on the Australian market where they would price match it. Isn't that a little bit devious? A price bid guarantee that you could practically never use because there will never be another person to beat that price. Now, even if you have a very similar looking item from another store from the same manufacturer, quite often Bunnings will refuse to price match because their SKU, their version of that product, is specifically locked down to them as a retail chain. So there's nowhere else to get it. Now, we started with that little expose because I think that this year is a great case study in the nebulousness of words and why you should not trust companies that are telling you that a word suddenly changes in meaning depending on what is most optimal for them and their success. All this to bring us to Xbox. For the longest time, Xbox has tried to redefine what it means to be a gamer, especially on the Xbox. But if they could have gotten away with it, they would have done it for everybody. We all remember the fiasco around exclusivity. First, exclusivity meant what exclusivity means, which is you can only get a game from this particular platform on these particular devices. Then they tried to, in a large way, change what it meant to be exclusive when they started porting their games day and day to PC. And I remember arguing with the content creators like Destin Nagari on his YouTube comments when he said that, oh, Xbox has all these exclusive games. And then I said, no, they are not exclusive because they are on PC. Now, you could specify that they are console exclusive, which will give you between the two words enough specificity to now once again be accurate in what you were trying to say. But no, the arguments of content creators at the time and Xbox themselves was basically if we are not on Xbox, that's exclusive. And they try to use the roundabout way to once again say, like, hey, you can only get these things from Microsoft supported storefronts. But then unfortunately, quite quickly, Microsoft started releasing their game then on Steam. Then it wasn't that, oh, well, this is exclusive because it's on Microsoft supported storefronts. It was exclusive because it's on Microsoft supported platforms. Now, because it was merely running on Windows, it was once again exclusive because somehow I guess Microsoft gets dibs or credit for anything that is ever created on Windows, which again isn't true. But that was a fiasco. We went back and forth with exclusives so many times you would think we were playing a tennis match. But hey, now a campaign started a few months ago with this is an Xbox. And I think that I'm disappointed in myself for not seeing the connection right away, for not seeing how nefarious this will turn out to be. Because when they started saying that this is an Xbox and this is an Xbox, and then suddenly we had TVs being an Xbox, we had Fire Sticks being an Xbox, we had the consoles, of course, as an Xbox, but we also had PCs as an Xbox, we had handheld PCs as an Xbox you can take with you. I failed to point out that this was a dangerous path that we were walking on because once again, they were trying to redefine what it means to have a word and to respect the definition of that word. Because you see, a TV is not an Xbox. you know, it is merely the argument Microsoft makes is that if a device can access through a web browser or a specific app a version of cloud streaming from their servers, they consider that device to be an Xbox. But that's not true. That is not what an Xbox is. An Xbox console is an Xbox console. It is a device that is made by Microsoft. It runs a custom version of Windows in order to get its operating system. It plays on games that are released for the Xbox platform. Those are a specific version of the game. You see, the ROG Ally, the ROG Xbox Ally and Ally X were recently released, or not released, but at least announced. And somehow this has created an uproar in the community where you have a lot of these Xbox influencers and talking heads trying to redefine what it is to be an Xbox alongside this company. And for me, it's quite simple. When you download the game from the PlayStation Store, you download the PlayStation version of that game. Download it from the Xbox Series console store, you're going to download the Xbox console version of that game. Download it from the Nintendo store, you'll download the Nintendo version of that game. And finally, download it from Steam or any other storefront on PC, and you're going to download the PC version of that game. When you get to the ROG Xbox Ally, you are downloading the PC version of that game. Therefore, it is not an Xbox. That is my argument. That's the one that I will present to you. Because again, words have meaning. But now we get to the next announcement. Apparently, Microsoft is going to go and has signed a multi-year partnership with AMD to create next gen consoles, which is fantastic. That's fabulous news. I was thrilled when I hear that part. And then they say, we want to make Windows the best place to play. And suddenly, alarm bells go on in your head because then you think to yourself, well, are they then trying to position yet another PC as an Xbox? Because they hinted at the fact that you'll be able to access multiple storefronts. Well, here's the thing. Let's just say that we're talking about Steam. Steam does not sell Xbox game. Steam sells PC games, and some of those games are made by the Xbox game studios and Microsoft in general, I suppose, but they are not Xbox games. They are PC games made by Microsoft. So if you were to get Steam on an Xbox, they would have no games to sell because they don't sell Xbox games. Unless you get a PC to be called an Xbox, and then Steam can sell as many games as they want to because they have always sold PC games. And that is where the community finds itself. What I think um I find to be ripped apart, it just really annoys me about these debates is that it is not dissimilar to the frustration that I feel over the enshetification of the word woke. Once white culture appropriated that word and then tried to redefine it, and I would say successfully redefined it, to be so far gone from what it meant to be. You see, the word woke was never about representing progressive values or liberal values or whatever it is, the left leaning ideologies that people think it represents. It was always about an awareness of racial injustice, especially when it came to the police and other systems of government that made it harder for a black person to exist in that society simply for the mere fact that they were black. That is really what it pointed to. And even that version of it may be a little bit removed from the original saying, but when it existed in black communities, that definition was the acceptable one. Stay woke, stay aware of what is going on so that you realize that as a black person in this country or, you know, on a broader diaspora, you are going to be looked at a certain way and you're going to experience certain things that have nothing to do with you as an individual, but everything to do with your collective as a race. That's really where it was. The when white culture appropriated this word, part of them tried to make it about progressive values because, okay, equality and inclusion and the idea that a person should not be discriminated against for the way that they look, that seemed to be a fairly progressive ideal. But that in itself was already a diversion, a derivative from what it originally meant. Then the other white people got in touch with it, and they realized that, again, the best way to destroy a particular ideology or the particular idea is to make that idea so vast, so nebulous, and so ridiculous as to make it just basically meaningless. And I would say for most people, that's exactly what they've been able to achieve. So, despite the best of intention, the word has now become something so far removed from its original concept as to be either entirely meaningless or actively destructive to the original people and meaning that brought it about, basically. So now we go back to Xbox. And when I see this happening, I think to myself, absolutely, this is exactly Microsoft's plan. You see, Microsoft doesn't want to be accused of having abandoned Xbox. So, what they want to do is they want to make the word Xbox so meaningless and so nebulous that anything can be an Xbox. Oh, you have a smartwatch that can affect, that can access an internet browser portal. Can you go to like xcloud.com or whatever relevant website it is that they will put on the portal at? And there, that's an Xbox. Simply by the mere fact that it has internet access, I suppose. But that is not an Xbox. That's not true. But unfortunately, it is so discouraging to see so many people, so many gamers that could otherwise be intelligent human beings believe and fall in line with this narrative. And I have seen this happening in real time, and it is the most depressing thing to see, you know, because you see people that understand fundamentally that a platform needs exclusives. But now they have been brainwashed, basically. No, not with their own help, of course, not through any sort of like I guess an implant if that wasn't necessary, but like willingly brainwashed to believe that simply because a company tells you something, that is that thing. I mean, I watched the argument between Podwork and Dog Dark, and it's like the person is basically saying, "Oh, well, because the company calls it this, then it is that." But no, no, that's not how that works. That's not critical thinking. That's not critical thinking. People don't just get to redefine words and we say, oh, well, because the government says this is this, then we are doing this. No, that's not how that works. That is how we end up in 1984 scenarios. That's how we end up in, you know, oh God, what was it? A Brave New World scenario. This is how dystopias are created when words don't have meanings anymore, you know? So that's it. That's my thing. Now, when it comes to the devices in and of themselves, I want to see them succeed. The ROG Xbox Ally, I do not see how it could succeed. So, merely for intellectual curiosity, I'm glad that it's coming out because if there is something that I'm not seeing, I would love to be enlightened. I have seen comments by Trucknet and everything over the internet, and this person is extremely enthusiastic about this direction. I don't understand it. I don't see what they see that is going to be so good. And even if we were to take it at face value, a Xbox console that can support both Xbox and PC, I suppose, in order to have other storefronts from PC make their way on it. To me, that really just sounds like a PC, you know? Because do you think you will get both operating systems working on it? Like you'll be able to play your traditional Xbox games, including from past generations, maintaining that backwards compatibility, as well as play PC games? That it sounds good on paper until you think about it, because then you would think, okay, if a person has access to Steam and they have access to the Xbox version of that game as well, why on earth would they not choose Steam? Let's face it, Steam is far more solid of an investment platform than Xbox is, because at any time they could once again just change their mind, you know? I would also say that I am cautious about listening to the words of Xbox executives, especially because these are the same people that promised you that you will get high fidelity VR with Project Scorpio as one of the main targets. and Xbox has never released a VR product. These are the same people that told you that they were buying these companies such as Bethesda and ZeniMax Studios, basically the whole of ZeniMax, in order to give you exclusive games on platforms where Game Pass exists. And now these games are not just exclusive to platforms where Game Pass exists. So what I'm saying is that quite plainly, they have a history of lying to you. These are also the executives, including Sarah Bond herself, that have come out and promised you a year or two ago that you will see a groundbreaking handheld, the next technological leap in gaming, that games will be coming within the next 12 months. They have a history of lying, whether they do it with as much malice as I think that they are redefining Xbox as, or they do it simply because they were too ambitious in their targets. The point is, at the end of the day, these are unfulfilled promises. So I will caution you to pay attention to that and to ask yourself, can you really trust their word? I do think that they are going to make a play for the living room once again next generation. The way that I see it though is that they simply make um small form factor PCs with a customized layer of Windows that allows for those games to run as PC games. However, it will reduce some of the background tasks and unnecessary parts of Windows that make it such a resource hog for everything. That being said, once again, if Microsoft were to develop such a custom version of Windows that could be so much better for gamers, I do not see that version of Windows being exclusive to these Xbox branded devices. I think they would just sell it to everybody else because gamers would probably appreciate that even on their home built desktop PCs, so on and so forth. But these are my thoughts, and I am intellectually curious to see what happens, but I am deeply saddened that now we are having arguments over whether something is or is not an Xbox. Because I'm going to tell you, Bunnings has a monopoly on the hardware market, and the hardware market, as we define it right now, does not include the pitiful like forays into really distracting tactics. The only reason that they sell smart doorbells or you know furniture or baskets or whatever it is that is approximating a Kmart or an IKEA is to obfuscate the level of their hardware dominance and thus their monopoly. It is exactly like if a a telecom company had a monopoly like 70% of the market in telecommunications, and then they started to offer like car insurance or credit cards. And then suddenly they will be like, well, we are not a dominant player in the telecom industry because look at what we sell to people. We sell them car insurance and pet insurance and everything. And when so we compete with all companies in that sense, but it's like, yeah, but none of those companies sell what you sell. None of them as are also having a telecommunications network to sell to people, and that is 90% of your business. No, words have meanings. Bunnings is a monopoly. The Xbox ROG Ally is not an Xbox. The next Xbox console may not be an Xbox. We'll see what happens. And that's the way that it has to be. But hey, who am I but just some guy on the internet? And I'll see you next time.